And as promised at the beginning, Jay, why don't you take us through what we did at Reddit here recently?
Yeah, so what I did is I'm the Redditor of the group, and I am frequently on our fantasy football. And what our fantasy football does is they have specific threads for people to ask keeper questions, and people will answer those questions. So what I did is I went and I picked 4 questions at random out of, I believe, Thursday's keeper thread, and we're going to go ahead and answer those. So what I'm going to do is we're going to give the name of the user and their question, and we're going to let the commish, in all his wondrous glory of knowledge, answer these questions. And we'll be posting this to our fantasy football, at least this segment. So the first question is by user North Country Winters. He's in a 12-team PPR. You lose the draft round pick for the round the keeper was drafted in 2013. That's exactly what we do. He can keep 3. He doesn't have to keep any, but he can keep 3. You got that, Kamish? All right, so here's his choices. He can keep LaShawn McCoy in the first, Aaron Rodgers in the second, Reggie Bush in the third, Randall Cobb in the fourth, Antonio Brown in the fifth, or Gio Bernard in the sixth. And what he wants to know is, does he take Shady, Gio, and Brown, or Cobb, Brown, and Shady? Based on drafting value, he's leaning towards Brown, Shady, and Gio. Any input is appreciated. So, Rob, take it away.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that North Country Winters, you might live in your neck of the woods there.
Yeah.
Michigander.
Yep. Well, I was just up at the greatest of North Countries, of the Keweenaw Peninsula, of the Great Upper Peninsula, where the waters of Lake Superior were a balmy 60 degrees.
Is that English?
Nice. What's that, Jim?
Is that they speak English up there? They speak Eupidism.
Yeah, eh? They sure do. You know, up into UP.
Whoa. About to go get a LaButt Blue, eh?
Yeah, you hoser.
All right. Well, I would say I actually totally agree with Reddit user here. I would take Shady in the first, Brown in the fifth, and Gio in the sixth is definitely the way to go. I mean, Shady, is a top 2 overall pick across the board, and he could still potentially have value for North Country Winters depending on where he's actually picking in the draft. That's another reason we ask people to decide to learn where you're going to be drafting. If this guy's picking 10th, 11th, 12th, or whatever, he's even getting value in the first round for Shady because he's going 1 or 2 overall. So I would keep him regardless. If I'm picking first, I would still keep Shady in the first round. Rodgers, ixnay him right out of the gate. I mean, if you look at current ADP, and again, that's why it's important to look at ADP, Rodgers is going at the beginning of the third, so he's not getting any value there at all for having to keep him in the second. And quarterback is so deep right now, you have to look at position scarcity, and we do not recommend in any situation keeping quarterbacks as keepers, especially in early rounds, unless you're in a 2-quarterback league or something. I'd say Reggie Bush doesn't give him any value at all in the third. I believe, and we believe here at Red Zone Warriors ranking, that Gio Bernard's going to outscore Bush anyway, and you get him 3 rounds later as a keeper over Bush. So that's a no-brainer for me to keep Gio over Bush there. Cobb is a good second-round value, but Brown is not only a better point producer, as he showed last year, but he's even a better value in the fifth at 3 rounds of value over Cobb. So although we all high on Cobb, Brown is going before him, and you're getting him even better value than Cobb. So that's definitely the way to go. The only other option to consider is to potentially put Shady back into the pool if you are picking first. And the reason for that is you put him back in, you go ahead and keep Brown and Gio, and then I would add Cobb to that mix. So go ahead and keep those 3 guys at their good value, and then you simply redraft Shady with your first overall pick. So that's definitely what I would do there in that situation there, North Country Winters.
Well, good point, Robs. That even proves that even I can agree with the retarded monkey from time to time. So next question, A-Dub-FTW. His question is, need help selecting my keeper. I have attached the scoring and my team, and I'm torn a couple of ways. The player in question are DeMarco, Demarius, Jordy, RG3, and Jordan Cameron. 12-team PPR league. Please advise. Thank you in advance. So, Rob, you already had a chance to look at the scoring and his team. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume from this that he's only getting to keep one of these guys, and he's not saying anything about rounds that these guys have to be kept. So value in this situation is irrelevant. You simply want to keep the best player that you possibly can, at their position. So, RG3 for me is out again because there's no value for him. You're not telling me you're getting him in the 16th round. Plus, I looked at the scoring system, and it's 4-point passing. Quarterback is so deep. Again, we're not going to be keeping a quarterback and not keeping RG3 in this example. Cameron is a good player. He did great, especially the first half of the season last year as a breakout guy. But he's not. He's fourth or fifth at his own position. And again, there's no value being retained here, so I would pass on Cameron as well. DeMarco, he's frankly an injury-prone player. He's not even in the top 5 at his own position in ADP, so he's out for me. So basically it comes down to Jordy Nelson or Demaryius Thomas. And although, we here are super high on Jordy Nelson this year, they just signed him to a 4-year extension there in Green Bay for like $39 million and $14 million guaranteed. So they're clearly high on him as well, and he'll get a shit ton of balls this year. But the clear-cut number one answer here is Demaryius. Demaryius is the best player in this question. He's the best player at his position. He's ranked 1 in my rankings for sure, and he finished as the number 1 at his position last season in the most productive offense of all time. So my answer is Demaryius Thomas.
All right, so our next question is coming from user Pagels, and please forgive us if we're pronouncing your usernames wrong. We're kind of dumb. What can we say? So he has a 0.25 point PPR league, so it barely matters, he says. He loses the same round he was drafted in last year. So wherever the player was drafted last year, that's what he's got to give up. So he gets to keep 2. He has 16 teams, so times are usually tough on the waiver wire. He can keep Jimmy Graham in the 2nd, Reggie Bush in the 3rd, Gio in the 5th. He knows he's keeping Jimmy. Good choice. But he doesn't know about Reggie versus Gio. I think I already know where this is going. But, Kamish, lay it out for him.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this earlier. So, of course, Jimmy Graham is a lock. I mean, keeping him in the 2nd, he's going in the 1st, especially in a 16-round league that's deep. Yeah, that is a lock for sure, and I hope for you that you're drafting in the 16th hole to get even better value for Jimmy. But he's clearly a lock there. Gio is going a full round in front of Bush, and he's doing it for a reason. He's a better player. He's going to outscore Bush. They're similar players in similar roles, but we have Gio ranked higher, as does most of the fantasy world, quite frankly. Gio's a younger player. He's one of these second-year breakout guys who had an incredible rookie season. And he has a better shot, frankly, of not missing any games, unlike Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush is an injury-prone guy. You're probably going to miss 2, 3, 4, 5 games from him. And Gio doesn't have a guy like, Bell there, sitting there, who's being talked about getting up to 50% of the touches there in Detroit. So Gio is the way to go, and the fact that you get him in the 5th is even a better value than Bush. So the answer is clearly Big Jimmy just got paid Graham, along with one Mr. Gio Bernard.
All right, I just want to add one thing to that. I was actually on my way home today at a McDonald's somewhere in the Upper Peninsula in the middle of nowhere, and I picked up a Detroit Free Press sports section that talked about the way that the backfield was going to work this year in Detroit, most likely. And it is actually looking like Bell is going to be the main back. Bush is going to be used more like he was, surprise, surprise, back when Joe Lombardi was his offensive coordinator in New Orleans, where he barely got 100 touches a year as far as rushing, but was used more as a receiver out of the slot or a receiver out of the backfield. And don't forget, they're also talking about Theo Riddick being used quite a bit. So this is a possible 3-headed monster in Detroit, which, as a Detroit fan, I'm fine with. But as a fantasy owner, I will not be keeping Reggie Bush off my squad from last year, and I probably will be staying as far away as possible from Lions running backs unless they drop very far.
Yeah, Jay, isn't Mikel LaSure going to be potentially a goal line back there as well, just to cluster it up even more?
Actually, what I'm hearing is that he's a possibility for that, but they think that they can use Riddick and Bell for that quite a bit too. So I don't know how much LaSure is going to get playing time. He'll probably get some, which doesn't add to any confidence in taking any Detroit running backs as a fantasy option. But like I said, I would stay far away from Reggie Bush. I agree with the commish here and stay away from him and take Gio. He's going to put up more points anyway.
Yeah, I think actually I got the last question. It's from Reddit user Drew Bice, or in French that's Drew Beachy. Anyways, the question is 12-team league, 0.5 PPR, 2 keepers per team. Each keeper takes the place of a certain round's pick in the year's draft based on where they were drafted last year. The players' rounds I have options are as follows. Lacey in the 2nd, Morris in the 6th, Stacy in the 9th. I'm believing this is Julius Thomas in the 9th, Kaepernick in the 10th. I have the 10th pick in a snake draft. So I already know this is draft position. Good for you. Starters go as follows: 1 QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 defense, 1 kicker. Several solid keeper options. What would you do? Thanks in advance.
All right. Well, he's got kind of a standard 12-man league here. Half point PPR. I frankly don't know why people do that. I would just either go none or go a full point. But it doesn't have a whole lot of effect on this decision for me. Too much. But again, you get 2 keepers. So we are never. I've been hammering this home. We were never going to advise you to keep a quarterback, because the position is just so deep. Unless it's a very unique scoring system or it's a 2-quarterback league, just do not do it. Kaepernick, even though you're getting him in the 10th, I mean, you're drafting him probably in the 8th or 9th. You're not, so it's not even much value. There's just no reason to do that. So he's out for me. Julius Thomas is a must. He's a must in the 9th round, hands down. Julius is probably going. Well, when Gronk comes back and the ADP switches around, Julius might go in the early 3rd. You're getting a ton of value for him. He's a stud at the position. He's going to set you apart every week unless you're playing the Jimmy Graham owner that week. So he's definitely a must for me. Stacy is a good value in the 9th. But his role isn't cemented, as much as some of the other running backs on this list. And I doubt you can keep 2 players in the same round. You mentioned both him and Julius go in that same round. And I doubt your league would even let you keep 2 keepers in the same round. But regardless of that, he's also out for me. So it comes down to Lacey in the 2nd or Morris in the 6th as your keeper. And that's probably one of the main reasons you asked this question, because that's kind of a tough call a little bit. From where you are picking, out of the 10th spot, that's 8 spots of value, or picking Lacey, in the 8th, that's 8 spots of value, in the 2nd round at your pick for Morris, and it's a little over 2 rounds. In a 0.5 PPR, it hurts Morris, a little bit. He's not a guy who catches a lot of balls anyway, so, I wouldn't worry about that too much. He's a super solid back. He's consistent. He'll get a lot of yards, get a lot of goal line carries. Last year he actually played really, really well. He was just on a really bad Redskins team that was always losing, and he wasn't able to close out games in the 4th quarter like he was the year before and get a lot of those extra yards and so forth. So it was nothing against him. He's a really good guy. We're really high on him this year. If I were you, I would try to find out from your league mates. Who they're keeping, and if any of them are keeping players in the 1st round, so you can kind of get a sense, for which pick you might truly get there, in that spot. You really can't go wrong either way, in my opinion. But without knowing any more specific information to your league or getting any more insight on some of the other guys and who they might be taking in that 1st round, so who might be available to you in that 10th spot, I would probably just go ahead and keep Lacey. In the 2nd, unless you think you can draft him in the 10th spot, maybe he'll be available for you if a lot of guys are keeping 1st-round keepers in the 9 spots before you pick. So that's what I would recommend, just going ahead and keeping Lacey, and go ahead and go with the lock of Julius Thomas there in the 9th.
Thanks,
All
Rob.
right. Well, absolutely. I think that wraps it up here for tonight. We talked about what to do, prepare for your draft, what to think about during your draft, and went ahead and answered some questions there for some of those guys on Reddit. All right, on our next show, we're going to be breaking down the major training camp headlines and position battles in the AFC. So join us in 2 weeks for that. In the meantime, go to Red Zone Warriors, where you can watch previous episodes, see our rankings, and subscribe to and rate the show via iTunes. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us all your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. So for the Cushman and the Jimmer, I am Rob the Commish Smith, and remember, if you are taking a fantasy off season, you are already losing. And we'll catch you next time.